Welcome back. Tonight we drift through the sleepy streets of medieval England. So wherever you are, however your day has been, you have nothing to do now but rest. There are no twists tonight, nothing to follow, nothing you need to remember in the morning. A city of timbered lanes and wood smoke, growing still beneath a darkening sky. We'll drift slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere at all. If these journeys help you rest, you're welcome to follow along, but only if you'd like to. And if you're listening now, leave the name of your city and the time where you are. Wherever you're listening from, you're in good company tonight. So let yourself settle. Let your shoulders soften, and let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Breathe in slowly, and let it go. There's no need to stay awake for any of this. Just let the streets of medieval England come to you. Long before castles dotted the hills, the shape of this land was drawn in the dirt. You can still find the physical edge of early medieval England in the west. It is a massive earthwork known as Offa's Dyke. In the 8th century, workers dug this trench by hand. They piled the soil high to form a steep bank. It stretched for roughly 150 miles across the green landscape. This was not just a simple wall. It was a deep mental barrier. It permanently defined the cultural divide between the English and the Welsh. The ditch cut through misty valleys and over high ridges. It told everyone exactly where one world ended and another began. Today the grass has grown thick over the old soil. Sheep graze quietly along the ancient boundary. But the line remains. It is a quiet reminder of how a single trench shaped two nations. When the Normans arrived in the 11th century, they needed to show power right away. You can see the raw result of this goal in the northern city of York. A steep, man-made hill dominates the old streets. This mound exists because William the Conqueror was in a hurry. He had no time to cut and carve stone. Instead, his men forced local workers to pile earth into a massive heap. They topped this fresh hill with a heavy wooden keep. It was designed to scare a rebellious local population. The fortress loomed over the wooden houses below. It cast a long, dark shadow across the settlement. Torches burned on the timber walls at dusk. The message was clear and fast. Power had shifted, and the landscape itself was forced to bear the weight. Today, a stone tower sits on that same earth. The steep grass banks still demand a heavy climb. That same Norman king permanently fixed the economic map of his new realm on a windy hill in Wiltshire. The site is called Old Sarum. It is a massive, circular earthwork that predates the conquest. In the year 1086, William called every major landowner to this green space. He had just finished the massive Domesday Book survey. Now, he used that newly gathered data to bind the country together. He forced the lords to swear a direct oath of loyalty to him. Colorful tents pitched on the grass under the open sky. The broken regional kingdom was suddenly transformed. It became a highly centralized state in a single afternoon. The king knew exactly who owned every field, pig, and plough. He used that knowledge to forge a new kind of control. The sweeping rings of old Sarum still sit quietly in the landscape. They hold the memory of that defining moment. The wind on that high hill eventually changed the map again. The original cathedral of the region was built right inside the rings of Old Sarum, but the exposed hilltop was incredibly harsh. The wind howled so loudly that the monks could not hear themselves sing Mass. The weather battered the stone walls without mercy. By the 13th century, the clergy had simply had enough. In 1220, they abandoned the windy fortress entirely. They moved down into the flat, marshy water meadows below. There, they laid the foundations for a massive new church. This became Salisbury Cathedral. The air was calm, and the singing could finally be heard. Soon, the entire city followed the monks down into the valley. They left the old hill to the grass and the sky. The city only exists in its current spot because a gentle breeze was much preferred to a howling gale. While some towns moved for comfort, other landscapes were emptied by royal decree. The vast wild expanse of the New Forest in Hampshire exists for a single reason. A king wanted a private hunting ground. In 1079, William I looked at this populated region and decided it should be wild. He evicted thousands of peasants from their homes. His men demolished over 20 active villages. They purposely let the farmed land revert to wild heath and dense woodland. The king did this solely to protect deer and wild boar for royal sport. Stone cottages crumbled and were slowly swallowed by ferns and ancient oaks. The morning mist settled over empty clearings where families once farmed. The land was frozen in a wild state by law. Today, ponies still graze quietly among the trees. The forest feels ancient and natural, but it is actually a monument to a king's private leisure. This royal obsession with hunting shaped the map far beyond Hampshire. Vast swathes of southern England remained completely undeveloped for centuries. This was due to the strict rule of forest law. The Norman kings declared nearly a third of the country as royal hunting grounds. Places like Epping Forest in Essex were locked away from normal use. It became a blinding offense for a peasant to cut down a tree. Hunting a deer could cost a man his life. royal wardens patrolled the quiet dirt paths in chainmail. They watched the shadows for poachers. This harsh legal code froze the growth of the land. Villages could not expand. Farms could not clear new fields. The ancient woodlands grew thick and massive. The trees aged in perfect peace, protected by the threat of violence. You can still walk under these massive oak canopies today. They survive because a medieval king wanted a quiet place to ride. In the north, a different kind of royal violence created a space for quiet retreat. The breathtaking ruins of Rievaulx Abbey sit in a remote Yorkshire valley. They are there because of a brutal military campaign. After a rebellion, the king ordered the harrying of the north. His armies burned crops and destroyed villages. They left the region a desolate, empty wasteland. Because the land was ruined, it became incredibly cheap. Strict Cistercian monks were looking for isolation. They purchased massive tracts of this empty valley. Here, they built a pristine, self-sufficient utopia in stone. The deep forest hid their work from the world. They turned the scarred earth into quiet farm fields. Sheep grazed on the hillsides at dawn. The monks found perfect peace in a landscape that had been violently cleared. The soaring arches still stand in the quiet valley. They are a beautiful result of a terrible beginning. Far to the east, monks shaped a very different kind of wilderness. The vast watery landscape of the Fens in Cambridgeshire was a sprawling swamp. But it was carefully managed by the clergy of Ely. They did not try to drain the entire wetland. Instead, they built a delicate network of local ditches. They built narrow, raised earthen causeways through the tall reeds. This allowed them to travel the still waters safely. They harvested the rich natural resources of the marsh. They cut thick reeds for thatching roofs. They dug dark peat to burn for winter fires. The monks lived in harmony with the water. The silhouette of their great abbey rose above the morning mist. It looked like a stone ship floating on a calm sea. They turned a hostile swamp into a productive, watery estate. The quiet twilight over the Fens still holds the memory of their careful, muddy work. Monks also reinvented the urban landscape by physically altering the flow of water. The city of Bath had been a famous Roman spa town. But it found a completely new identity in the Middle Ages. The local clergy built a series of stone weirs across the River Avon. They learned to control the heavy water flow. This transformed the ruined ancient town into an industrial powerhouse. The rushing river now drove large wooden water wheels. These powered heavy fulling mills on the banks. The mills pounded woven cloth to clean and thicken it. This water-driven industry fueled the regional wool trade. Mist rose from the churning river at dawn. The sound of wooden gears echoed through the valley. The city stopped looking backward at its Roman past. It built a wealthy new future on the steady rhythm of the river. The water still tumbles over those stone steps today. Sometimes, a single building could decide the fate of an entire region. Newcastle became the dominant power of the north because of one wooden bridge. The Normans built it over the steep, deep gorge of the River Tyne. This simple crossing created a vital choke point for all travel. Anyone moving north or south had to use this bridge. It forced all trade and military movement to pass through one narrow spot. The city built a heavy stone castle on the high cliff above. It loomed over the merchants and carts crossing in the morning mist. The fortress cast a long shadow over the water. The city grew rich by controlling this single path. Without the bridge, the river was a barrier. With it, the river became a source of immense wealth and control. The modern bridges of the city still cross at this exact, narrow gorge. While some cities grew from trade, others were born from political arguments. Oxford became a world-renowned university city due to a diplomatic spat. In 1167, King Henry II was locked in a bitter conflict with France. He abruptly banned all English scholars from attending the University of Paris. Suddenly hundreds of academics were stranded. They needed a place to gather, study, and debate. They gathered in the provincial town of Oxford. Scholars in heavy woolen robes met outside simple stone churches. They held parchment scrolls and talked deep into the evening. The town had no grand plan to become an intellectual hub. It was simply a convenient meeting place for exiled thinkers. But their arrival accidentally founded a school of power. The quiet dirt streets slowly filled with colleges and libraries. The university exists here today simply because a king lost his temper with a foreign rival. A different royal decision permanently split the identity of the nation's greatest city. London became the undisputed capital through a slow, accidental migration. It happened because Edward the Confessor decided to build a massive new church. He chose a marshy riverbank upstream at Westminster. The abbey was surrounded by wooden scaffolding and stonemasons' huts. It sat far outside the old Roman walls of London. Slowly, the royal court began to move out of the crowded city. They wanted to be near the beautiful new church. This gradual move permanently divided the metropolis. The old walled city remained a bustling financial hub. The new area around the abbey became the center of political power. Campfires burned along the Thames as the two districts grew apart. You can still feel this divide today. The money stays in the ancient city, while the government rules from the shadow of the abbey. The old financial centre of London was completely transformed by a sudden disaster. The shift from a city of wood to a city of stone was sparked by fire. In 1135, a massive blaze swept through the streets. It destroyed wooden structures all the way from the river to St. Paul's. The ruin was absolute. This prompted the city to issue its first real building rules. The new laws encouraged wealthy citizens to build thick party walls out of stone. These heavy dividers would act as fire breaks between the timber-framed houses. Laborers worked in the dirt streets under the afternoon sun. They laid stone over the charred remains of older buildings. The city slowly became heavier and more permanent. The fire forced London to rebuild with an eye toward the future. The stone walls hidden between the shops today are the quiet legacy of that ancient inferno. While the merchants built stone walls for safety, the king built them for dominance. The Tower of London transformed from a simple keep into a massive fortress because of paranoia. King Edward I returned from the Crusades with new ideas. He had seen advanced military engineering in the Middle East. He applied these concepts directly to his stronghold on the Thames. He added a deep, water-filled moat. He built a double ring of thick stone walls. Torches flickered along the new battlements at dusk. The fortress became an unbreakable symbol of royal power. It was designed to keep enemies out, but also to keep the city in check. The heavy walls sent a clear message to the people of London. The king was watching, and he was perfectly secure. The massive rings of stone still dominate the riverbank. They are a monument to a king's deep need for control. That same king permanently altered the financial map of the city in 1290. Edward I issued a devastating decree. He expelled the entire Jewish population from the country. The crown immediately seized their properties in a district known as the Old Jewry. This act erased a vital, thriving community overnight. These families had provided the crucial credit necessary to build the nation. Their loans had funded many of the great abbeys and stone castles. Suddenly, the narrow medieval streets were quiet. Doors were boarded up, and belongings were scattered in the dirt. A somber and empty atmosphere settled over the neighborhood at twilight. The financial heart of the city lost its most experienced lenders. The king took their wealth to fund his own wars. The street name still exists in the modern financial district. It is a quiet reminder of a community that was abruptly erased. Royal power eventually met its match in a damp, marshy meadow in Surrey. The site is called Runnymede. It became the birthplace of modern law for a very practical reason. The ground was simply too boggy for a cavalry charge. In 1215, rebellious barons needed to meet King John safely. They chose this specific waterlogged site beside the river. Colorful canvas pavilions were set up in the damp grass. The barons knew the king's heavy knights could not attack them in the mud. The soft earth neutralized the royal military advantage. Under overcast skies, the tense standoff ended in an agreement. The king was forced to seal the Magna Carta. The foundation of modern liberty was laid here. It did not happen in a grand palace or a stone castle. It happened in a wet field, because the mud kept everyone honest. While the barons fought for rights, coastal towns fought for wealth. The ports of Kent and Sussex grew incredibly rich through a unique tax loophole. Towns like Sandwich were part of a group called the Cinque Ports. They made a special deal with the crown. In exchange for providing the king with ships and men, they received a massive reward. They were granted total freedom from tolls and taxes. This rule turned them into incredibly wealthy, semi-independent city-states. Large stone merchant houses rose along the wooden docks. Heavily armed cogships anchored in the harbor under the warm afternoon sun. The towns kept all the profit from their bustling trade. They did not have to share their wealth with the royal treasury. This simple legal agreement built a coastal empire. The grand medieval buildings still line the quiet streets today. It was all funded by a clever tax break. But coastal wealth was always at the mercy of the weather. The pretty, landlocked town of Rye in East Sussex was once a vital seaport. It bustled with sea trade and heavy ships. Then, a series of violent storms struck in the 13th century. The massive waves altered the course of the river Rother. The churning water choked the busy harbor with thick mud and silt. The water became visibly shallow at low tide. Eventually, the sea retreated entirely. The bustling sea hub was stranded 2 miles inland. Wooden ships were left resting on the dry silt. The merchants moved away, and the money stopped flowing. The town became too poor to update its buildings. Its architecture was completely frozen in time. Today, you can walk down the cobbled streets and see perfect medieval houses. They survive only because the sea abandoned the town and took its future away. Further up the coast, the sea did not retreat. It attacked. The lost city of Dunwich in Suffolk was once a massive city. It was the 10th largest town in the country, rivaling the capital in importance. But it was built on soft sand and gravel cliffs. In 1286, a massive storm surge battered the coast. The violent waves began a steady process of erosion. Half of a stone church slid into the churning dark sea. Wooden houses collapsed into the water by lantern light. Over the centuries, the ocean swallowed the entire medieval city. The bustling markets and grand streets simply vanished into the waves. Today, only a tiny modern village remains on the edge of the cliff. The great medieval city is entirely gone. It rests quietly at the bottom of the sea. The water took back everything the merchants had built. When the sea destroyed a town, the survivors sometimes started over with a perfect plan. The town of Winchelsea features a rigid, modern-looking grid layout. This is because it was entirely master-planned in the 13th century. The original settlement was completely destroyed by the Great Storm of 1287. King Edward I ordered a new town built on a nearby hill. He did not let the streets grow naturally. Instead, he laid them out in a strict, defensive grid. Perfectly straight dirt roads crossed at sharp right angles. Uniform timber and stone houses lined the new blocks. The bright midday sun lit up a town built by mathematics. It was a rare moment of total urban control in a chaotic era. The grid was designed to be efficient and easy to defend. You can still walk those straight lines today. They feel surprisingly modern, on a quiet medieval hill. Other ports thrived by using the strange rhythms of the water to their advantage. Bristol grew into a massive trading hub because of a quirk of the earth. The city sits on a deep river gorge with a massive tidal range. This created a perfect, natural defense system. Medieval ships could sail miles inland on the high tide. They rode the deep water safely into the city. Then, the tide would rush back out to sea. The water simply vanished. The large wooden merchant ships would rest upright on the thick, soft mudbanks. They sat quietly under the stone warehouses in the soft dawn light. When the water was gone, the ships were completely hidden from coastal pirates. No enemy could sail up the empty, muddy gorge. The city grew rich because its harbor disappeared twice a day. The deep mud provided a perfect, temporary safe place for the world's wealth. Sometimes, the water disappeared and never came back. The city of Chester lost its status as a major global port because of a slow, silent shift. Over centuries, the River Dee gradually silted up. The thick mud pushed the coastline miles away from the city walls. Chester had built a massive stone water tower to guard its busy docks. It was designed to protect ships anchored right at its base. But as the river choked on silt, the water retreated. The tall, circular defensive tower was left standing awkwardly in a grassy field. The river it was built to guard became a distant muddy trickle on the horizon. The sad evening light now falls on dry land. The city did not lose its port to a sudden storm or a war. It lost its wealth to the slow, quiet build-up of dirt. The tower still waits for ships that will never return. Economic collapse could freeze a town just as effectively as retreating water. The impossibly crooked, timber-framed houses of Lavenham in Suffolk exist because of a sudden crash. The town grew incredibly rich in the 15th century. The local wool market was booming. Wealthy merchants built lavish homes using green, unseasoned oak. They walked the dirt streets in heavy cloaks under the evening mist. But then, the local cloth industry suddenly died. The money vanished almost overnight. The town became far too poor to rebuild or update its buildings. As the green oak dried over the centuries, the timber frames warped and twisted. The houses leaned into strange, crooked angles. Because no one had the money to replace them, they were left completely untouched. The town was accidentally preserved by its own poverty. Today, the brightly painted, leaning houses are a beautiful monument to a sudden financial ruin. While Lavenham survived its economic shift, other places were quietly erased by it. The haunting empty fields of Warham Percy in North Yorkshire are the result of a changing market. This village actually survived the terrible plagues of the 14th century. The people endured, and the community held on. But it was eventually purposely emptied around the year 1500. The local lord realized that wool was now more valuable than crops. He evicted the remaining tenant farmers from their homes. He chose to replace their simple stone cottages with vast, rich pastures. The thatched roofs were slowly dismantled in the misty morning light. The families packed their lives and walked away. The village was not destroyed by disease or war. It was simply replaced by grazing sheep. Today, the rolling green hills are perfectly peaceful. Only the ruined church remains to show that people once lived in the valley. Despite the plagues and economic shifts, the era ended with a brilliant reach for the sky. The soaring, steady vertical lines of perpendicular Gothic architecture were born from a simple desire. The builders wanted pure light. Beginning in the 1330s at Gloucester Cathedral, master masons changed their style. They purposely shifted away from complex, heavy curves. Instead, they designed vast grids of straight stone mullions. They carefully fitted these tall frames into the walls. This new engineering allowed them to install massive sheets of stained glass. The heavy stone seemed to vanish. The choir was suddenly flooded with pure, soft sunlight. The soft beams lit up the dust in the air. The architecture was no longer about heavy defense or dark mystery. It was about letting the sun pour into the building. The straight lines pull your eyes upward, toward the light that still fills the quiet room today. In the heart of London, A quiet marvel of engineering hides in plain sight. Westminster Hall has stood here since the late 14th century. If you step inside and look up, you will see a vast roof made of dark oak. It spans nearly 70 feet across the empty air. There is not a single stone pillar holding it up. Medieval carpenters built this massive canopy using a clever system of interlocking wooden brackets. They call it a hammer beam roof. The heavy timber pieces fit together perfectly to spread the immense weight outward to the thick stone walls. It is a quiet triumph of craft and balance. The wood has held firm through centuries of changing kings and passing storms. The hall feels vast and still today. Soft daylight falls from the high windows onto the empty stone floor. You can almost hear the echoes of the men who carved those beams so long ago. Just a short walk away, another hidden space rests quietly beneath the city streets. The famous church of St. Mary le Bow was rebuilt by Christopher Wren after the Great Fire. But its deepest secrets survived the flames. If you go down beneath the modern floor, you will find a crypt from the 11th century. It is one of the oldest underground rooms left in London. The air down here is cool and still. Rough stone arches rise from thick pillars to hold up the heavy ceiling. These curved arches are known as bows. They gave the church above its unusual name centuries ago. The modern city rushes by just a few feet above this quiet vault. Yet down in the crypt, time seems to stand completely still. Warm lights cast soft shadows against the pale Norman stone. It is a peaceful place to pause and breathe in the dark. Not far from those quiet arches, the River Thames flows steadily toward the sea. The water moves freely today. But the original medieval London Bridge changed the very nature of the river. It was a massive stone structure built with 19 narrow arches. These thick stone piers acted like a giant dam across the water. They restricted the natural flow of the tide so much that the river would slow to a crawl. During the bitter cold of medieval winters, this slow-moving water would freeze completely solid. The ice grew thick enough to hold the weight of thousands of people. Londoners would walk out onto the frozen river and hold grand winter fairs right on the ice. They set up tents and roasted food over open fires. Today the modern bridges let the tide run fast and clear. But the river still remembers those quiet, frozen winters of the past. If you travel south to the coast of Kent, the massive stone walls of Dover Castle watch over the sea. The main tower is known as the Keep. Its walls are 20 feet thick in some places, but they are not entirely solid stone. Hidden deep inside that immense thickness is a secret network of narrow rooms. They are called mural chambers. Medieval builders carved these windowless spaces directly into the core of the castle walls. They served as private chapels, quiet sleeping quarters, and secure rooms for the king's most trusted guards. Walking through them today feels like stepping into a secret world. The stone corridors are tight and hushed. The modern world outside fades away completely. Warm lights now guide visitors through the dark passages. It is strange to think of people living their daily lives hidden inside the very walls that protected the realm. Further inland, the towering keep of Rochester Castle rises against the twilight sky. The stone is weathered and pale. If you look closely at the high exterior walls, you will notice something strange. There are neat rows of small, square holes, carved right into the ancient masonry. They sit high above the green grass below. These empty spaces are called putlog holes. Centuries ago, builders used them to hold massive wooden beams. Those heavy timbers supported temporary wooden galleries that hung out over the edge of the walls. Defenders could stand in those overhanging structures and drop heavy rocks on anyone attacking the gates below. The wooden galleries rotted away a very long time ago. Now, only the square holes remain in the quiet stone. They look like tiny dark windows opening into the past. Birds sometimes rest in them as the sun sets over the quiet town. Along the southern coast, the medieval walls of Southampton hold a different kind of architectural secret. As you walk beside the old defensive perimeter, you will see a series of massive stone arches. They are built directly into the towering wall. It looks like a strange choice for a military defense. But these large arches were actually the front doors of wealthy merchants' homes. When the town needed to build a new defensive wall, they wanted to save money and space. So they simply incorporated the existing stone houses right into the new fortifications. They blocked up the grand entrances with thick stone to keep the town safe. Today, modern roads run right past these ancient sealed doorways. Streetlights cast a warm glow on the rough masonry at dusk. It is a quiet reminder of how ordinary life and grand history often blend together in the very same stones. High on a steep green hill in Dorset, the ruined walls of Corfe Castle catch the evening light. The stone towers are broken now, but they still look grand against the sky. If you gaze up at the highest surviving walls, you might spot small stone boxes sticking out from the masonry. They have open holes in the bottom. These are medieval toilets, known back then as garderobes. They were built right into the thickness of the castle wall. The design was incredibly simple and highly effective. Waste would drop straight down the sheer cliff face to the ground far below. It was a practical solution for a fortress built on such a steep, rocky peak. Today, The castle is quiet and still. The wind blows gently through the empty stone chutes. The green hills roll away into the distance, hiding the simple everyday secrets of the people who lived here. Inland from the coast, the massive stone bulk of Winchester Cathedral rests on a quiet green lawn. It is one of the largest cathedrals in Europe. Yet this towering Gothic structure is secretly floating on a bed of wood. When medieval builders first started digging here, they found a waterlogged peat bog. The ground was far too soft to hold thousands of tons of stone. So they cut down thousands of beech trees and laid the heavy logs deep in the mud. They built the massive stone walls right on top of that wooden raft. Because the groundwater has no oxygen, the beech logs never rotted. They have stayed perfectly preserved in the dark, wet earth for centuries. The great cathedral still relies on those hidden trees today. As you walk through the quiet, soaring nave, you are actually standing on an ancient, buried forest that refuses to decay. Just a short walk from the cathedral, a peaceful stone quadrangle sits in the afternoon sun. This is the Hospital of St. Cross. It is the oldest surviving almshouse in the entire country. It was founded in the 12th century to provide food and shelter for 13 poor men. The buildings are beautiful and calm. Tall brick chimneys rise above the old slate roofs. Arched doorways lead into quiet, grassy courtyards. The most remarkable thing about this place is not just its age. It is the fact that it has never stopped doing exactly what it was built to do. For nearly 900 years, people have lived in these exact same rooms. The daily rhythms of care and quiet rest have continued here, without a single break. The modern world rushes by outside the gates. But inside the old stone walls, the peaceful routine of the past lives on. Further west in Somerset, the quiet town of Wells holds a beautiful secret inside its great church. Tucked away in the north transept of the cathedral is a mesmerizing clock from the late 14th century. It is not just a tool for telling the time. It is a stunning map of the universe, as medieval people understood it. The large wooden face is painted with intricate golden stars and bright colors. It tracks the slow phases of the moon and the steady movement of the sun. In the very center sits a stationary earth, right where they believed it belonged. The clock ticks softly in the dim light of the stone hall. It has been counting the hours and days for over 600 years. It is a restful thing to watch. You can stand in the quiet shadows and see the medieval sky turning gently on the wall. Beneath the busy streets of Bristol, a very different kind of sanctuary hides in the dark. Deep under a modern office building lies a perfectly preserved 12th century ritual bath. It is known as a mikveh. The city's medieval Jewish community used this quiet stone pool for spiritual purification. It was a place of deep faith and quiet reflection. They gathered here until they were forced to leave the country in the late 13th century. The small, square chamber is carved from rough stone. A natural spring still feeds crystal clear water into the deep basin today. Subtle modern lights now illuminate the ancient masonry. The water is perfectly still, reflecting the low, vaulted ceiling above. It is a hidden pocket of peace beneath the noise of the modern city. The quiet pool remains exactly as it was left, holding on to the memory of the people who once prayed here. Out in the quiet countryside of Oxfordshire, a massive stone building rises from the green fields. From the outside, the great Coxwell barn looks grand enough to be a cathedral. But it was built entirely for grain. Cistercian monks constructed this vast agricultural warehouse in the 13th century. They needed a massive space to store the rich harvests grown on their surrounding estates. If you step through the heavy wooden doors, the sheer size of the interior takes your breath away. The roof is an intricate web of massive oak timbers. Thick stone walls keep the air cool and dry. Soft, dusty light filters down through small slits in the masonry. The space is empty now, but it still feels full of purpose. It is a quiet monument to the simple, daily work of growing food. The ancient wood still smells faintly of dry earth and old summers. In the heart of Warwickshire, the red sandstone ruins of Kenilworth Castle stand against the dawn sky. The fortress is surrounded by vast, perfectly flat green meadows. These sunken fields are actually the ghosts of a massive medieval water feature. Centuries ago, the castle sat in the middle of a half-mile-long artificial lake. Engineers flooded the valley to create a brilliant defense. But the deep water served another vital purpose. It was a colossal fish pond. The lord of the castle needed a constant supply of fresh fish for religious fast days. The lake provided food and protection all at once. The water was drained away a very long time ago. Now the soft grass traces the exact outline of the old shores. You can walk across the dry lake bed in the quiet morning air. It is easy to imagine the dark water that used to reflect the great stone towers. Not far away, a strange circular building sits quietly in a grassy field. The Kinwarton Dovecote is a simple stone structure with a conical roof. It looks like a tiny, windowless tower. But if you step inside, you will see curved walls lined from floor to ceiling with hundreds of small, square holes. This building was designed to house over 500 pigeons. These birds were not kept for sending messages across the kingdom. They were raised to provide the lord of the manor with a steady supply of fresh meat and eggs. The harsh medieval winters made fresh food very scarce. This clever stone building solved that problem perfectly. A single shaft of daylight falls from the roof, illuminating the empty nesting boxes. A wooden ladder still rests against the curved wall. The room is silent now, but it was once filled with the soft sound of wings. In the center of a quiet village square in Northamptonshire, a tall stone monument reaches toward the sky. This is the Eleanor Cross of Geddington. It was carved in the late 13th century. King Edward I built 12 of these beautiful markers across the country. He placed one at every spot where his beloved wife's coffin rested on its long journey to London. Today, only 3 of those original crosses survive. The stone is intricately carved with delicate patterns and small, graceful figures. It stands surrounded by modern brick cottages and quiet streets. At twilight, the soft glow of a nearby street lamp highlights the ancient weathered details. The village has grown and changed all around it, but the tall stone cross remains perfectly still. It is a quiet, enduring mark of a king's grief, standing patiently in the middle of everyday life. Hidden inside an unassuming stone tower in Cambridgeshire is a breathtaking secret. The vaulted chamber of Longthorpe Tower holds one of the most complete sets of medieval wall paintings in Europe. These vibrant murals were created in the 14th century. They cover almost every inch of the walls and ceiling. For hundreds of years, these beautiful images were completely lost. Later owners covered them up with thick layers of plain whitewash. They were only rediscovered by pure chance during a renovation in the 1940s. Today, the soft natural light from a narrow window reveals kings, musicians, and strange animals painted in earthy reds and warm yellows. The colors are faded now, but the intricate details are still clear. Standing in the quiet room feels like opening a forgotten book. The painted figures look down from the vaulted ceiling, finally brought back into the light after centuries in the dark. Near the eastern coast, the pale stone pillars of Norwich Cathedral rise high into the quiet air. The grand architecture is stunning, but the most fascinating details are incredibly small. The lower walls are covered in secret medieval graffiti. If you shine a light across the stone at just the right angle, the faint scratches suddenly appear. You can see hundreds of tiny hand-carved ships and quiet prayers. There are also strange geometric circles carved deep into the pillars. These are known as witches' marks. Ordinary people carved them centuries ago to ward off evil spirits and protect the sacred space. The grand cathedral was built by wealthy bishops and kings. But these tiny hidden marks belong to the common people who walked these aisles every day. They left their hopes and fears scratched into the cold stone, waiting quietly in the shadows for someone to notice them. Just a short walk through the same city, a much smaller stone building holds a quiet history of its own. Attached to the side of St. Julian's Church is a simple reconstructed stone cell. It has only one tiny window slit. This was once the home of a medieval anchorite. She was a woman who chose to be permanently walled inside this tiny room for the rest of her life. She received her daily food through the small window. People from the town would come to that same window to ask her for spiritual advice. She lived her entire life in deep, quiet prayer, separated from the world by a few inches of solid stone. Today, a peaceful modern garden surrounds the little cell. The afternoon light falls softly on the old flint walls. It is a place of profound stillness, echoing with a very old kind of devotion. In the center of the city, the Church of St. Peter Mancroft hides a clever piece of medieval engineering. The carved wooden choir stalls look perfectly normal from the outside. But hidden directly beneath the seats are dozens of empty clay pots. They are built right into the low stone walls that support the heavy timber benches. These are known as acoustic jars. Medieval builders placed them there on purpose. The hollow clay pots were designed to capture the voices of the choir singing above them. The jars would gently amplify the sound and push it back out into the large stone church. It was a brilliant invisible way to make the music sound richer and fuller. The church is quiet now. Soft natural light highlights the ancient timber seating. But the hidden jars are still waiting in the dark, ready to catch the next beautiful note. Further north, a dark secret winds its way through the solid rock beneath Nottingham Castle. Hidden deep inside the sandstone cliff is a steep medieval tunnel. It is known today as Mortimer's Hole. The rough walls still show the ancient marks of the pickaxes that carved them. In the early 14th century, a young King Edward III used this forgotten passage for a daring raid. He crept up through the absolute darkness to sneak into the heavily guarded castle. He surprised his mother's powerful lover, Roger Mortimer, and overthrew him in the dead of night. Today, subtle modern lights illuminate the winding path. The tunnel descends sharply into the cool, quiet earth. The noise of the modern city above completely disappears down here. It is a mysterious, echoing space. You can almost hear the soft footsteps of the young king moving slowly upward through the dark stone. Not far away in Cheshire, the ruined keep of Beeston Castle sits high on a rocky crag. Inside the broken walls, there is a terrifyingly deep hole in the ground. It is a medieval well, and it drops straight down into absolute blackness. The shaft was hand-dug through 370 feet of solid sandstone. The builders had to dig that deep, just to reach the natural water table below the high cliff. It is an astonishing feat of engineering. It took years of grueling, dangerous labor to carve this perfect circle into the dark rock. Today you can stand at the edge and look down into the quiet void. The bottom is completely lost in the shadows. Overcast daylight softly illuminates the top edges of the ancient stone. The deep well remains a silent testament to the sheer determination of the people who built this fortress. In the nearby city of Chester, the modern streets hide a vast medieval secret right under your feet. Beneath the bright storefronts lies a network of 13th century stone undercrofts. These vaulted subterranean rooms were originally built by wealthy merchants. They needed safe, fireproof warehouses to store their valuable goods. Today, these beautiful stone crypts are perfectly preserved. Many have been turned into quiet wine cellars or atmospheric cafes. Modern glass doors sit neatly between the ancient stone pillars. Shoppers walk directly over these hidden rooms every single day, without ever realizing they are there. Warm, ambient lighting glows softly against the rough medieval masonry. The heavy stone arches feel incredibly solid and calm. It is strange to think that such a busy, modern city is resting entirely on top of these quiet, forgotten vaults. The past is always waiting just a few steps below the pavement. Across the Pennines in West Yorkshire, a tiny stone building juts out over a calm river. This is the Chantry Chapel of St. Mary the Virgin in Wakefield. It is built directly onto the side of a medieval stone bridge. It is one of only 4 surviving bridge chapels left in the entire country. In the 14th century, travelers would stop here before crossing the water. They would step inside to pray for a safe journey, and pay a small toll to the priest. The little chapel is fully intact today. Its ornate carvings look beautiful against the twilight sky. Modern streetlights cast a warm, gentle glow on the ancient masonry. The river flows quietly past the heavy stone piers, just as it has for centuries. The bridge is empty of traffic now. The small chapel stands as a peaceful guardian over the dark, moving water. Further north in the city of York, a narrow cobbled street feels like a step back in time. This is the Shambles. The old timber-framed shops lean so far forward that their roofs almost touch in the middle of the street. It looks like a charming accident of age, but it was actually done on purpose. Medieval butchers built these houses. They designed the upper floors to overhang the street, to create deep shadows below. This clever design shielded the fresh meat on their ground floor counters from direct sunlight and heavy rain. Today, the street is quiet at blue hour. The modern shop windows glow warmly at street level. The heavy wooden beams tilt and sway against the evening sky. The butchers are long gone, but their strange, leaning architecture remains. The narrow alley feels safe and enclosed, wrapping you in the quiet history of the city. Just a few streets away, The vast stone towers of York Minster rise above the rooftops. Inside the great cathedral, the great east window fills the space with breathtaking color. It is the largest expanse of medieval stained glass in the world. Its survival through the centuries is a quiet miracle of care and preservation. During the First World War, the city faced the terrible threat of air raids. The entire window is the size of a tennis court, but the people of York did not leave it to chance. They carefully dismantled the fragile glass, piece by piece. They buried the ancient panels in a deep trench in the nearby gardens, to keep them safe from the bombs. Today, sunlight streams through the massive, intricate panels once again. The quiet stone interior glows with soft blues and reds. The beautiful light is a testament to the people who saved it. The rhythm of medieval England was shaped by the setting sun. As daylight faded, a strict rule took hold across the towns. You can still imagine the heavy toll of the curfew bell. It rang out every night at 8 o'clock. This sound was a firm legal command for all residents. They had to cover their hearth fires with a metal shield. This shield was known as the couvre-feu. Then, they had to stay indoors for the night. It was a vital, daily ritual. Wooden cities could easily burn down in the dark. A single stray spark could destroy an entire neighborhood. So, the bell brought a sudden, enforced peace to the streets. The glow of the fires vanished behind thick wooden shutters. The busy noise of the day faded into deep silence. People settled into their homes as the cold night air moved in. The town simply went to sleep, wrapped in darkness and safety. When the heavy city gates closed, the streets belonged to the watch. These were ordinary citizens, drafted into a quiet, serious duty. They patrolled the pitch-black unlit alleys in small groups. You might hear the soft crunch of their boots on the dirt. They carried glowing iron lanterns and long wooden polearms. Their job was to walk the empty paths until dawn. They looked for anyone wandering around after the curfew bell. More importantly, they kept a desperate lookout for fire. A faint orange glow in the wrong place was a terrible warning. They walked past leaning timber houses that seemed to touch overhead. The warm light of their lanterns cast long shadows on the walls. It was a lonely task in a sleeping world. They provided a small comfort to the people resting inside. The steady rhythm of their footsteps meant the town was safe. The night was dark, but it was not entirely unwatched. In some places the night begins with a sound that never stops. The market square of Ripon still echoes with a deep, resonant note. Every single night at 9 o'clock, a quiet ritual takes place. The official hornblower steps out into the cool, evening air. He wears a traditional coat and stands by the stone obelisk. He raises a large curved wooden horn to his lips. He blows a long note to all four corners of the square. This continuous nightly act has happened since the year 886. It is a simple promise made to the sleeping citizens. It tells them that the watch is awake and on duty. The deep sound rolls over the cobblestones and fades into the dark. It is a comforting anchor in the middle of the night. You can feel the weight of centuries in that single note. The town rests easy, knowing the old traditions still stand guard. Far from the towns, a different kind of night unfolded. The monks of Fountains Abbey lived by a grueling, unyielding schedule. Their entire existence was structured by the liturgy of the hours. Their day actually began in the dead of night. At 2 in the morning, they would rise from their beds. The stone halls were freezing and completely dark. They walked in absolute silence toward the vast abbey choir. There, they gathered to sing matins, the first of 8 daily services. Their faces were lit by the flickering glow of wax candles. The heavy white robes offered little warmth against the damp chill. Yet, their voices rose together in a smooth, ancient chant. The sound filled the empty, vaulted spaces of the church. It was a life of deep devotion and strict routine. They found peace in this harsh, beautiful rhythm. The world outside was asleep, but the abbey was fully awake. The quietest rhythm of monastic life belonged to the Carthusian order. These monks lived as absolute hermits, hidden away from the world. At Mount Grace Priory, the silence was profound and intentional. Each man lived completely alone in a small, solitary stone cell. He had his own walled garden to tend in peace. He spent his long days in deep prayer and quiet labor. Even his meals arrived without a single spoken word. Food was passed through a special angled hatch in the thick wall. This clever design ensured he never saw the servant outside. A simple wooden bowl of bread and pottage would just appear. The monk ate alone, surrounded by the soft light of his cell. It was a life stripped of all social noise and distraction. The days blended together in a calm, unbroken stream of devotion. They found a rare kind of freedom in this total, absolute isolation. As morning broke, the daily chores of the village began. Finding safe water was a constant struggle in these early settlements. The rivers and wells were often too dirty to drink from. So, the community relied heavily on the local alewife. These women spent their days brewing a drink called small beer. It was a weak, cloudy liquid with very little alcohol. The crucial step was boiling the water during the brewing process. This simple act killed the bacteria and made the drink safe. Everyone in the village drank it, from the oldest farmers to the youngest children. You could smell the sweet malty steam drifting from the kitchen hearth. The alewife stood by a large iron cauldron, stirring the warm liquid. Wooden barrels were stacked high in the corner of the smoky room. This humble daily task kept the entire village hydrated and healthy. It was the quiet fuel of the working day. The heavy rhythmic thud of the watermill was the heartbeat of the valley. Farmers brought their harvested grain to the Lord's mill every week. The building sat right on the edge of a fast-flowing river. The immense power of the water turned massive wooden gears inside. These gears slowly rotated huge, heavy turning stone wheels. The golden wheat was poured in and ground down into fine flour. It was a slow, steady process that never seemed to rush. The air inside was thick, with a sweet, dusty haze. Shafts of warm sunlight caught the floating particles of flour. The sound of the grinding stones was deep and comforting. It meant there would be bread for the coming days. The mill fed the entire community, one heavy sack at a time. You could feel the vibration of the stones through the wooden floorboards. It was a perfect partnership between human need and natural force. With flour ready, the bakers set to work feeding the town, but the local officials kept a very close eye on them. To protect citizens from fraud, towns enforced the assize of bread and ale. This was a strict set of rules governing price and quality. Officials would regularly conduct surprise inspections in the market squares. They carefully weighed the round loaves on brass scales. They also tasted the local beer to ensure it was strong enough. If a baker was caught selling underweight bread, the punishment was swift. They were publicly humiliated in front of their neighbors. The offending loaf was tied tightly around their neck. Then, they were dragged through the muddy streets for everyone to see. It was a harsh but effective way to maintain trust. The daily food supply was simply too important to leave to chance. Honest work was the only way to survive in the busy market. The markets themselves were loud, crowded, and full of sudden arguments. Justice in these busy spaces had to be incredibly fast. This need gave rise to the Court of Pie Powders. The strange name comes from the French words for dusty feet. It was a temporary court that only sat during market days. A judge would sit at a simple wooden table near the market cross. He listened to disputes over bad debts, false weights and petty theft. The traveling merchants were always in a hurry to leave town. So the court settled every argument instantly, right there in the open air. There were no long trials or endless delays. A decision was made, a fine was paid, and the market moved on. You can picture the tired merchants standing in their travel-stained clothes. They just wanted a fair deal before the sun went down. It was rough, practical justice for a world on the move. Once a year, the scale of trade grew beyond imagination. The quiet fields outside Cambridge transformed into something entirely new. For a few weeks, they became the site of Stourbridge Fair. This was the largest and busiest market in all of Europe. A massive temporary city seemed to appear out of nowhere. Hundreds of wooden booths and canvas tents covered the flat green pasture. The fair had its own named streets, busy taverns and strict courts. Merchants traveled from far away to sell fine cloth and rare spices. The air smelled of roasting meat, wet canvas and exotic goods. It was a sudden explosion of noise, color, and wealth. People saved their money all year just to visit this sprawling camp. Then, as quickly as it arrived, the entire city was packed away. The merchants left, the tents came down, and the noise faded. The land quietly returned to being an empty, peaceful field. Inside the capital, wealth was displayed in a much more permanent way. The political power of London was built on its trade guilds. The goldsmiths, fishmongers and mercers controlled the flow of money. They solidified their influence through the grand ritual of the guild feasts. These lavish banquets were held in massive, vaulted timber halls. The tables were covered in crisp white linen and heavy silver goblets. Wealthy members wore thick fur-lined robes to show their high status. They gathered to swear oaths of loyalty and negotiate strict monopolies. They also wanted to impress each other with their immense riches. The tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats and elaborate sugar sculptures. Hundreds of wax candles cast a warm golden light over the room. It was a boisterous, confident display of civic pride. These feasts bound the powerful men together in a shared rhythm of success. They were the true rulers of the city. Far away from the city wealth, the farming year followed an older path. The village of Laxton still lives by the medieval open field system. There are no enclosed private farms or modern hedges here. Instead, the land is divided into 3 massive, fenceless fields. The earth rolls away in long, narrow strips of different colors. A group called the Court Leet meets annually to manage the land. They dictate exactly what crops every single farmer must plant. This communal rhythm has remained completely unchanged for 800 years. Everyone works together, sharing the risks and the rewards of the harvest. You can stand on a gentle hill at dawn and see the pattern. The landscape looks exactly as it did centuries ago. It is a peaceful, cooperative way of living with the soil. The village moves as one, tied to the slow turning of the seasons. The old ways still make perfect sense here. Knowing exactly where your land ended was a matter of survival. Before maps were common, parishes had to rely on human memory. They practiced a yearly ritual known as beating the bounds. The entire community would gather to walk the exact borders of their home. They moved together through grassy fields and along the edges of the town. They carried long willow wands to strike the weathered boundary stones. It was a practical chore, but also a shared civic duty. Sometimes, they would gently bump young boys' heads against the heavy markers. This ensured the next generation would never forget the limits of their parish. The knowledge was physically passed down from old to young. It was a way of binding the people to their specific piece of earth. They walked under the overcast sky, tracing the invisible lines of their world. The landscape was mapped in their minds and their traditions. Spring brought its own set of ancient, joyful duties. The town of Hungerford still observes the medieval rhythm of Hocktide. This springtime festival dates all the way back to the 14th century. It is a peaceful centuries-old exchange to secure ancient grazing rights. Appointed men, known as tutty men, take to the quiet streets. They carry long wooden poles, beautifully adorned with bright spring flowers. They walk past historic brick and timber houses on a bright morning. Their job is to collect symbolic coins from the local residents. In return, they offer a small blessing for the coming year. It is a gentle reminder of the bonds between neighbors. The flowers bring a sudden splash of color to the old stone paths. The whole town pauses to honor this simple, enduring tradition. It feels like a quiet celebration of surviving another long winter. The new season is welcomed with ribbons and smiles. As the weather warmed, the interiors of grand buildings needed attention. The dirt and stone floors of churches grew damp and stale. They were kept clean through the summer ritual of rush-bearing. Villagers would head down to the riverbanks on a sunny afternoon. They gathered fresh, sweet-smelling green rushes and wild herbs like meadowsweet. Then, they carried these green bundles into the grand stone halls. They scattered the long reeds and small white flowers across the floor. This created a soft, natural, fragrant carpet underfoot. The rushes absorbed the summer moisture and masked any unpleasant odors. When you walked inside, the air smelled like a fresh meadow. Shafts of sunlight from high windows illuminated the floating dust. It was a simple, beautiful way to bring the outside world indoors. The soft crunch of the dried herbs became the sound of summer. The buildings felt fresh, clean and ready for the season. Late summer brought the exhausting, vital work of the harvest. When the main crop was finally cleared, a new rhythm began. The daily life of the poorest villagers was governed by the gleaning bell. The local church would ring this bell only after the farmers finished. It was a clear signal that the fields were now open. It became perfectly legal for the poor to enter the empty land. They walked peacefully through the golden harvested landscape at dusk. They bent down to gather any leftover grains of wheat that had fallen. It was slow, back-breaking work, but it meant survival for the winter. The stone church tower stood quietly in the distance, watching over them. This small act of charity was woven into the law of the land. Nothing was wasted, and everyone had a chance to gather food. The fading light cast long shadows over the quiet golden earth. The very end of the harvest was marked by a reverent pause. In the fields of Madron, they practiced a ritual called crying the neck. It happened when the absolute final handful of wheat was cut. The tired reapers would stand close together in the fading twilight. One person would hold the last golden stalks high in the air. They would shout loudly to signal the end of the grueling agricultural year. Then, they carefully wove those last stalks into an intricate knot. This beautiful object was meant to keep the spirit of the harvest safe. They would store it away carefully, until the spring planting began. It was a moment of deep relief, and quiet pride. The heavy work was finally done, and the wooden barns were full. The peasants stood in the quiet, empty field as the sun set. They honored the earth that had fed them for another year. Autumn also brought older, more mysterious customs out of the woods. Every September, the village of Abbots Bromley performs a mesmerizing ritual. Its true origins fade deep into the shadows of the Middle Ages. 6 local men dress in traditional rustic clothing for a slow, quiet procession. They silently carry massive, ancient reindeer antlers through the parish boundaries. They move in a rhythmic, weaving dance along the quiet village lanes. The timber-framed houses watch over them under a soft autumn sky. There is no loud music, just the steady sound of their footsteps. It preserves a strange woodland tradition passed down for over 1,000 years. Nobody knows exactly why it started or what it originally meant. But they continue to walk the path, honoring the deep past. It feels like a dream unfolding in the middle of the day. The ancient antlers look heavy, beautiful, and completely out of time. As November arrived, the village faced a harsh, necessary reality. The approach of deep winter was marked by the ritual of Martinmas. There simply was not enough fodder to feed all the livestock. The animals would slowly starve if left alive through the freezing months. So the village had to slaughter most of their herds. It was a bloody but essential task for their own survival. They spent long days working in the muddy, freezing cold courtyards. They salted and smoked the meat over small, smoldering wood fires. Wooden racks, draped with cuts of meat, filled the overcast days. The smell of wood smoke and salt hung heavy in the damp air. This preserved food would keep the families alive until the spring. It was a somber time, driven by the brutal math of winter. They worked quietly, knowing the snow was not far behind. The barns were prepared for the long, dark freeze. In the dead of winter, the apple orchards stood bare and silent. But the villagers of Somerset knew how to wake them up. They broke the winter silence with the loud ritual of wassailing. A small group would gather around the oldest apple tree at night. They wore thick coats, and carried warm lanterns into the dark orchard. They sang loud old incantations, and banged wooden pots together. The noise was meant to scare away any lingering evil spirits. Then, they poured warm cider directly onto the gnarled roots of the tree. This offering was supposed to ensure a bountiful harvest the following autumn. The warm glow of the lanterns lit up the bare, twisting branches. It was a cheerful, hopeful act in the middle of the cold season. They trusted that the trees were listening in the dark. The sweet smell of spiced cider mixed with the crisp winter air. The agricultural year officially restarted just after the New Year. This day was known as Plough Monday, the first Monday after Epiphany. In places like Corston, the villagers gathered in the freezing twilight. They would drag a large, decorated wooden plough through the muddy streets. The heavy farming tool was adorned with bright ribbons that fluttered in the wind. Men in thick woolen cloaks pulled it past the snow-dusted houses. They stopped to collect small donations from their neighbors along the way. This money was used to pay for the special plough light. It was a single candle kept burning in the local church. This small flame was meant to bless the upcoming planting season. It was a humble, quiet start to another year of hard labor. The wooden runners of the plough scraped softly against the frozen dirt. They looked forward to the spring, guided by that single hopeful light. During the quiet days of December, the church allowed a strange inversion. The strict, serious hierarchy was briefly turned completely upside down. This playful tradition was known as the rule of the boy bishop. A young choir boy would be elected by his peers for the role. He was dressed in full, miniature bishop's robes and a tall mitre. He stood solemnly in the carved wooden choir stalls of the cathedral. For a few weeks this child actually led the church services. He even gave sermons to the adults sitting in the pews. It was a sanctioned moment of gentle rebellion before normal order resumed. The soft glow of candles illuminated his oversized, ornate clothing. The older priests watched with quiet amusement from the shadows. It reminded everyone not to take their earthly power too seriously. Then, just as quickly, the boy returned to the choir. The grand cathedral went back to its ancient, serious rhythm. A different kind of humility was displayed just before Easter. The Thursday before the holiday was defined by the royal Maundy. It was a profound, quiet ritual performed by the reigning monarch. The king would travel to a grand cathedral in simple robes. He would kneel down on the cold stone floor in front of everyone. There, he personally washed the feet of selected poor citizens. It was a direct mirror of the actions from the Last Supper. He moved slowly, showing deep respect for the elderly men before him. Afterward, he distributed small silver coins and fresh food to the poor. Quiet onlookers watched this rare display of royal submission. The soft glow of candlelight caught the silver coins as they changed hands. It was a brief moment where power bowed to poverty. The ritual connected the highest ruler to the lowest subjects. The cathedral was filled with a heavy, peaceful grace. For many ordinary people, the ultimate break from routine was a pilgrimage. Thousands of people would leave their daily chores behind for a long journey. They walked for weeks to reach the shrine of Thomas Becket. The muddy dirt roads leading to Canterbury were filled with travelers. They wore heavy wool cloaks and carried simple wooden staffs. It was a journey of deep spiritual devotion, but also a rare vacation. It offered a chance to see the world beyond their own village. They walked in the warm afternoon sunlight, sharing the road with strangers. They drank in roadside taverns and told stories to pass the time. The massive stone cathedral slowly appeared in the distance, a welcome sight. It was a shared adventure that broke the endless cycle of farm work. People from all walks of life moved together toward a single goal. The road was hard, but the fellowship made it joyful. Sometimes, a journey was driven by fear rather than faith. A desperate fugitive could find temporary safety through the ritual of sanctuary. They had to reach the thick wooden doors of Durham Cathedral. There, they would grasp the heavy ancient bronze sanctuary knocker. The cold metal has been worn completely smooth by centuries of frantic touch. Holding this ring granted a person exactly 37 days of absolute protection. The law could not touch them as long as they stayed inside. It gave them a quiet, safe space to finally confess their crimes. They used this time to peacefully arrange their permanent exile from the country. It was a merciful pause in a world of swift, harsh justice. The weathered stone of the church exterior offered a silent promise. No matter what they had done, they were safe for a month. The heavy wooden door stood between them and the angry world outside. Time moved differently in medieval England. You can still find the proof carved into old stone porches. Look closely near the doorway of St Andrew's Church in Bishopstone. You might spot a small, crude circle scratched into the rock. Faint lines radiate from a central hole. These are known as mass dials. They were used long before mechanical clocks existed. A village priest would simply push a wooden peg into the center hole. The shadow acted as a crude sundial. It told the village exactly when the service was about to begin. The lines are worn down now by centuries of wind and rain, but they still catch the harsh afternoon light. They are quiet reminders of a world ruled by the sun. People did not count minutes or seconds back then. They simply watched the shadows stretch across the stone. The whole rhythm of the day was tied to the sky. Not everyone could leave their work to watch those shadows. People were busy plowing the fields or tending to animals. So the church had to reach them where they were. At St James in Shire, you can see a tiny window cut low into the thick wall. People often mistake these for leper windows. They imagine sick outcasts peering in from the cold, but the truth is much more practical. These narrow openings were used to send sound out into the parish. An attendant would stand inside during the most sacred part of the Mass. They would reach through the gap and ring a small handbell. The clear, sharp note would drift over the churchyard grass. It carried all the way out to the quiet green fields. Villagers would hear the bell and pause their heavy labor. They could share in the moment without ever stepping inside the building. For those who did step inside, the walls offered a very different kind of message. Most ordinary people could not read a single word of Latin. The church had to teach them through vivid pictures instead. Above the main arch in Holy Trinity Church in Coventry, a massive mural looms over the altar. This is a doom painting. It shows a terrifying vision of the Last Judgment. The colors are faded now, but the shapes are still clear. You can see angels standing above the clouds. Below them, red and ochre demons drag naked sinners into the fiery mouth of a monster. The images were meant to scare the congregation into good behavior. The peasants would stare up at the stone arch every Sunday. They saw exactly what awaited them if they strayed from the path. It was a harsh, visual lesson painted right onto the bones of the building. Not all church art was meant to be so serious. Sometimes the stonemasons left their own quiet jokes behind. You just have to know exactly where to look. High up in the ornate Gothic stonework of Lincoln Cathedral, a tiny creature hides among the angels. This is the famous Lincoln Imp. He sits cross-legged on a pillar, grinning down at the floor. He has small horns and a very mischievous face. Local legend claims that Satan sent the imp to cause chaos in the choir. The story says an angel finally turned the little demon to stone. But the truth is much simpler. A medieval carver likely added the imp just for fun. He tucked it away 30 feet in the air. It was a private joke, hidden in a vast holy space. The little monster still watches the quiet cathedral today. He waits for anyone curious enough to look up. You can find even stranger jokes on the outside of these buildings. High on the towers of many Somerset churches, bizarre stone monsters jut into the sky. They are known locally as hunky punks. They look a bit like gargoyles, but they serve no real purpose. A true gargoyle is a spout designed to throw rainwater away from the roof. A hunky punk is just a solid, comical carving. You can see a perfect example at St. Mary Magdalene in Taunton. A squatting, big-headed monster stares out into the overcast daylight. These figures were often carved as spiteful caricatures. A stonemason might carve the face of a rival builder he disliked. Or he might mock a local villager who had annoyed him. The mason would trap their ugly likeness in stone forever. The strange faces still look down on the quiet streets today. They are ancient grudges frozen in time. The monks had their own hidden secrets inside the choir stalls. Medieval church services were incredibly long. The brothers were required to stand through hours of daily prayer. Their legs would ache in the cold, damp air. So they invented a clever piece of furniture called a misericord. The word literally means an act of mercy. You can find beautiful examples at Cartmel Priory in Cumbria. The wooden seats in the choir are hinged. When you flip the seat up, a small ledge is revealed underneath. A tired monk could lean his weight against this hidden shelf. From the back of the room, he appeared to be standing perfectly straight. But he was actually resting his weary feet. The carvers often decorated the underside of these ledges with whimsical scenes. They carved mythical beasts and funny moments from everyday life. It was a tiny comfort, hidden in a strict world. Monks found other creative ways to bend the strict rules of their order. They loved eating meat, but it was strictly forbidden on fasting days. Fridays were meant for quiet reflection and simple meals of fish. The brothers at Lindisfarne Priory found a very clever loophole. They decided to classify the barnacle goose as a fish. The monks had never actually seen these wild geese breed or lay eggs. So they created a strange, convenient theory. They genuinely believed the birds grew on trees over the ocean. They thought the geese ripened like fruit and fell into the salty water. Because the birds came from the sea, they were legally fish. This meant the monks could happily roast a plump goose on a Friday. they could enjoy a rich, heavy meal without breaking their vows. It was a perfect blend of bad science and very good appetite. Food was not just for eating in the medieval world. In some places, it was literally money. The landscape of the Fens was incredibly wet and waterlogged. Cash was very scarce in this muddy region. So tenant farmers often paid their annual rent entirely in fish. The Domesday Book quietly records the wealth of Ramsey Abbey in Cambridgeshire. The monks there did not collect silver coins from their lands. Instead, they received tens of thousands of eels every single year. The slippery catch was a vital currency. The farmers would trap the eels in the shallow, reedy waters. They would weave willow baskets to carry the wriggling rent to the monastery kitchen. The monks would salt and smoke the massive catch. This abundant food source sustained the abbey through the long, dark winters. The local economy ran entirely on the silver flash of fish in the mud. The booming wool industry relied on a much less pleasant liquid. The Cotswolds grew incredibly rich by producing fine woolen cloth. But the raw wool had to be cleaned and bleached before it could be dyed. This cleaning process was called fulling. It required a very surprising secret ingredient. Workers in places like Chipping-Campden used stale human urine. They collected it in large wooden vats inside rustic timber workshops. The raw, greasy woven wool was tossed into the vats. Then a worker would step in with bare feet and trample the cloth. The natural ammonia in the stale liquid worked like magic. It stripped the heavy grease right out of the fibers. It bleached the wool perfectly clean. The work was smelly, exhausting, and deeply unpleasant. But it prepared the cloth for vibrant, expensive dyes. That terrible smell was the true scent of medieval wealth. Dealing with human waste was a serious business in the growing cities. London was packed tightly with houses and deep stone cesspits. Someone had to clean them out. This terrible job fell to men known as gong farmers. They were actually some of the highest paid workers in the city. But they were also deeply reviled by their neighbors. By law, they were only allowed to work in the dead of night. They would shovel the heavy waste into wooden barrels by the dim light of a lantern. They loaded the barrels onto carts and hauled them away from the streets. The smell was so bad that the farmers were forced to live in designated areas. They stayed on the very edge of the city, far from the wealthy merchants. They did the dark, dirty work that kept the crowded capital from drowning in its own filth. People believed that bad smells were actually dangerous. Doctors thought that foul odors carried diseases through the air. They called this invisible threat a miasma. This belief changed the way they designed their healing spaces. The medieval hospital of St. Mary's Spital in London took this very seriously. The massive timber-framed infirmary halls were kept incredibly clean. Nurses constantly swept the stone floors with sweet-smelling herbs. They scattered fresh lavender, rose petals, and chamomile across the ground. When people walked through the ward, their feet crushed the dried flowers. The air filled with a deeply fragrant, calming scent. The doctors thought the sweet smells would push the deadly miasma away. They were trying to purify the air itself. Even if the science was wrong, the result was beautiful. The sick patients rested in a quiet room that smelled like a warm summer garden. The actual medical treatments were much less pleasant than the lavender floors. Medicine at St. Bartholomew's Hospital was based entirely on the four humours. Doctors believed the human body was filled with four distinct liquids. These were blood, phlegm, yellow bile and black bile. They thought perfect health meant these fluids were in total balance. If you felt sick, it simply meant your humours were out of order. A doctor in a long robe would examine your symptoms carefully. But his solution was almost always the same. The universal cure for almost everything was to drain your blood. They would attach hungry leeches to your skin to pull the sickness out. Or they would cut a vein and let the blood flow into a bowl. They were trying to restore a delicate internal harmony. They just used a very messy, painful way to find it. When medicine failed, the journey to the graveyard was not always easy. In remote areas like the Lake District, you can still walk ancient corpse roads. Only the main Mother Church in a region had the legal right to bury the dead. Villagers from distant hamlets had to carry their lost loved ones for miles. They walked across specific, unhallowed dirt paths over the misty green mountains. The route from Ambleside to Grasmere is still marked by weathered stone crosses. The villagers never took the easiest or most winding path. They believed that spirits could only travel in perfectly straight lines. So they carried the heavy wooden biers straight over the rocky passes. They wanted to make sure the ghost could not find its way back home. The paths are completely empty now, but they still cut a quiet, eerie line through the desolate hills. People held on to strange beliefs even inside their own homes. When builders renovate old timber-framed houses today, they sometimes find a surprise. They lift the dusty wooden floorboards and discover a bleached horse skull buried in the dirt. You can see this in places like Ellsworth in Cambridgeshire. This was not a dark magic ritual or a curse. It was actually an early attempt at medieval acoustics. Builders believed that burying a hollow skull beneath the floor would change the sound of the room. They placed them under parlors or busy threshing barns. They thought the empty bone would act as a natural echo chamber. They hoped it would make music sound richer, or make working noises seem louder. It was a strange, hidden piece of engineering. The ancient skulls just rested quietly in the dark soil, listening to the footsteps above for centuries. Knowledge was just as carefully guarded as those hidden skulls. Books were incredibly rare and expensive in the medieval world. Every single page had to be painstakingly copied by hand. Because they were so valuable, libraries did not let you check them out. You can still see this strict system at Wimborne Minster in Dorset. In the quiet upper rooms, thick leather-bound books rest on long wooden reading desks. But every single ancient volume is permanently attached to the shelves. They are secured by heavy iron chains. The chains are just long enough to let a reader open the book on the desk, but they make it completely impossible to steal the text. The sunlight streams into the peaceful room, catching the dust in the air. The heavy iron links clink softly when a page is turned. The knowledge is freely shared, but it is firmly locked in place. The books they protected showed a very different version of reality. The Hereford Mappa Mundi is the largest surviving medieval map of the world. It was drawn on a single massive calfskin around the year 1300. But it is completely useless for actual navigation. The map does not show the true shape of the oceans or continents. Instead, it places the holy city of Jerusalem at the exact center of the parchment. The Garden of Eden sits proudly at the very top. The edges of the world are filled with faded ink drawings of mythical beasts. You can even spot strange, dog-headed men roaming the borders. The map was never meant to help a traveler find their way. It was meant to show the spiritual order of the universe. It is a beautiful yellowed picture of a world built entirely on faith and wild imagination. That deep faith made people very easy to trick. The busy dirt roads to the shrine of Walsingham were crowded with hopeful pilgrims, but they were also plagued by traveling con-men known as pardoners. These men wore dusty cloaks and carried small, ornate wooden boxes. They made their living by selling fake holy relics to gullible travelers. A pardoner would hold up a simple pig bone and swear it was the finger of a saint. He might wave an ordinary linen pillowcase in the air. He would claim it was the actual veil of the Virgin Mary. The pilgrims were desperate for a miracle. They would gladly hand over their silver coins for these worthless items. The pardoners promised instant spiritual rewards and forgiveness for sins. They sold invisible grace on the side of the road, packing up their wooden boxes before anyone realized the truth. Some people were looking for a much more practical kind of salvation. A strange legal loophole allowed medieval serfs to escape their harsh lords. A peasant was legally tied to the land they worked. But if they ran away, they had one desperate chance at freedom. They had to sneak into a chartered city like Norwich. The runaway would hide in the shadows of the narrow, bustling streets. They watched the wealthy merchants walk past the timber-framed houses. If the peasant could live there undetected for exactly a year and a day, everything changed. The law automatically declared them a free citizen. They were completely absolved of their feudal bondage. It was a tense, terrifying year of looking over their shoulder. But the city offered a true sanctuary. The thick stone walls protected anyone clever enough to vanish into the busy urban crowd. Even the wealthy knights were looking for ways to escape their duties. A knight was supposed to fight for the king whenever he was called. But many of them preferred to stay home on their comfortable estates. To avoid military service, a knight could pay a specific tax called scutage. This was known as shield money. At places like Framlingham Castle in Suffolk, a knight would hand over a heavy leather pouch of silver. A royal clerk would count the coins on a wooden table covered in parchment. The king was actually quite happy with this arrangement. He used the cash to hire highly trained professional mercenaries. This quiet exchange of silver slowly transformed the entire English army. It shifted from a feudal obligation into a paid professional force. The knights bought their peace, and the king bought better soldiers. The ordinary men of England did not have the money to buy their way out. In fact, the law forced them to prepare for war every single week. In 1363, a strict new rule was passed across the country. Every able-bodied man was required to practice longbow archery for 2 hours every Sunday. They had to gather on the grassy village green right after church. You can imagine the scene in places like Castle Combe in Wiltshire. Men in simple wool tunics fired heavy arrows at woven straw targets. To make sure they practiced, the king banned all other sports. Even an early, rough form of football was strictly forbidden. The bright Sunday afternoon sunlight was reserved only for the bow. This law ensured the country always had a massive reserve of deadly archers. The village green was not a playground. It was a quiet military training camp. While the peasants practiced archery, the royal court was busy with absurd fashion. The most ridiculous trend of the 14th century was a shoe called the poulain. Wealthy nobles at Eltham Palace in London wore these strange leather creations. The shoes had toes that were incredibly long and sharply pointed. The tips were so empty they had to be stuffed with moss just to hold their shape. The trend quickly spiraled completely out of control. The toes became so absurdly long that walking was genuinely dangerous. The nobles actually had to tie the tips of their shoes to their knees. They used delicate silver chains just to manage walking up the grand stone stairs. The shoes rested on rich woven tapestries, looking completely ridiculous. It was a perfect symbol of extreme wealth. Only someone who never had to work could wear something so wonderfully useless. The royals also claimed ownership of things they had never even seen. Under a bizarre medieval law enacted in 1324, the monarch owns the monsters of the sea. If any sturgeon or whale washes up on an English beach, it automatically belongs to the king and queen. These creatures are officially known as royal fish. The law is technically still in effect today. If you walk along the quiet pebbled stones of Dover Beach at dawn, you might see a silver sturgeon washed ashore. The white cliffs loom in the pale morning light. Before that fish can be sold at any market, it must be formally offered to the monarch. The palace usually declines the catch now, but the ancient rule remains written in the books. The crown still holds a strange, quiet claim over the deep, cold waters of the coast. The law did not just apply to fish. Medieval courts regularly put everyday animals on trial for their crimes. If a pig bit a child, it was not just chased away. If a horse kicked a man to death, it faced true justice. The animal would be formally arrested and held in the local stone jail. At places like the Newgate prison site in London, the scene was incredibly strange. A large domestic pig might be tied to a post in a dim courtroom. A judge would sit at a high wooden desk and look down at the beast. The animal was even provided with a defense lawyer to argue its case. If the court found the creature guilty, the sentence was severe. The town hangman would publicly execute the animal. They treated the beasts exactly like people. They believed that every living thing had to answer to the law. Human punishments were often just as strange in public. A cruel medieval penalty was reserved for women accused of being scolds. This meant they were charged with gossiping or arguing too loudly with their neighbors. The punishment was a device called the ducking stool. You might see one set up over the muddy waters of the River Stour in Canterbury. The accused woman was strapped tightly into a wooden chair. The chair was attached to a long timber beam that worked like a seesaw. Men on the riverbank would lower the beam, plunging the woman under water. A cheering crowd would watch from the edge. The sudden cold shock was supposed to cool her temper. It was a harsh, humiliating spectacle, designed to enforce quiet obedience. The river simply washed over the chair, indifferent to the strange rules of the people on the shore. But the law could also reward people for keeping the peace. The village of Little Dunmow in Essex holds a bizarre medieval tradition that survives today. It is called the Dunmow Flitch, and it began way back in 1104. The prize is a massive cured side of bacon. To win it, a married couple must prove they have not argued for exactly a year and a day. They also have to swear they have not regretted their marriage for a single moment. They stand before a mock court of locals who act as a jury. The modern couples smile in the warm indoor lighting of the village hall. It is a cheerful, strange little ceremony. The heavy meat rests on a wooden table, waiting for a perfect couple. It is a quiet reminder that a peaceful home has always been something worth celebrating. Our walk through medieval England is coming to an end. Wherever you've drifted to, you don't need to come back. There's nothing more to listen for tonight. Sleep well.